How long is it going to take?
We are now live.
That's what I was telling you. I'm still alive.
Right.
You've confirmed it.
I did. Um, I've got a virtual background that I try to get rid of in the cat. So we'll just live with it for a while. You can see it's like an alternative reality with something trying to bleed through. So the Matrix is playing games with us.
There we go. Take the red pill, everybody out there. Take the red pill.
Anyway, this background is my daughter's backyard. You can see the Chesapeake Bay Bridge off in the distance. It's actually on the left, not on the right. The picture is flipped,
Yeah, that happens a lot
but
with.
she's right on the Chesapeake Bay. So I guess we'll live with that since I can't figure out how to get rid of it. I could get another one, but frankly, I'm afraid to try. I don't know what I wind up with. Ah, goodness sakes, JR, welcome. How are you? You just got back from the doctor.
So, we alone or anybody with us yet?
Yeah, I don't know if Luke is around or not. I sent him
Yeah.
a message and I didn't get
Okay.
one back. So I don't know. What have I got here? I'm not sure I understand where I'm at. StreamYard. That's StreamYard. Oh, okay. There. Monster Fish Gal and 3G are here. So
No, it
this
was.
is a chat format. I really need to get rid of this. If Luke comes in, I'll ask him to fix it.
You know what I was thinking as a topic or something we can talk about, discuss, but a lot of people don't, would be you brought it up the other day, genetic problems with tropical fish versus the
Yeah, yeah,
versus the problem
right.
of raising them. You know, sometimes when you raise them badly, you get all kinds of deformities too.
Yeah, that keeps coming up. And you're
You know,
right, it's a significant issue. What am I
yeah.
behind here? Oh,
You're
oh,
disappearing. You're a ghost.
oh, this is strange.
You got to stay in focus. I hate to
You know
say
what?
that.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna I'm gonna go out and come back on and see if we can get rid of it. I'm gonna leave the meeting. Well, shit. I'm back in the same thing.
You're still trapped in the matrix.
I'm still trapped, right? Too weird. Huh. I may have to shut the computer down or something to do it. Oh well, we'll just live with it. Maybe Luke will show up and fix it. Beto, Beto Aquatics. Beto Aquatics. Beta, oh, it's Beta. Beta Aquatics. Hello, hello. Nice to see you. We'll give you a wrench. Sandy Doughty is here. Monster
Cool.
Gal. Well, we got about 20 people in so far. Genetics.
You want to open it up?
Well, okay. The tropical fish hobby as a marketing strategy has been around, oh golly, since really about the 50s, the 1950s. There were people selling fish before that, but they really were not farmers as such. They were not dedicated breeders. There was not much of an industry. Aquariums were made locally by and large. There were one or two manufacturers of fish food. Was it Wardley was one?
Tetra.
Back in the 30s at least.
No, Hearts Mountain.
Hearts Mountain. That's true. Yeah, Hearts Mountain was in it for a long time, and they actually had their home base in Bradenton, Florida. When I moved to Florida in 1991, they shut down their animal operation. And it was rather amazing. They were sitting on about 20 acres, half of which were buildings, one of which was just thousands of aquariums, and the other was birds and reptiles. And they got rid of all of it. They got out of the live animal industry.
Well, you know what they got into, don't you? Hearts Mountain's a big developer now. They had all that real estate from all the factories they owned all over the country, and they started developing. And they're a big builder, a nationwide builder. But they don't do fish food anymore.
Really?
Yep.
No,
Right
that's interesting. So they bought the property that they were working on. That seems to be the key to running a successful business is to own the property. So
yeah,
you know,
you don't have that extra layer of overhead that's leaching off of your sales.
well, you get to pay it off, and it increases your capital.
But it's the same thing with Vornado. Vornado is one of the largest landlords and mall owners in the world, and they started out as two guys.
Is that right?
Yeah, well, Vornado, they were two guys, and they basically closed the chain, and then they sold, and they developed Home Depot just to fill their properties, and then they sold Home Depot, but they're still renting all the land that Home Depot is around. So yeah, there's a lot of companies that went into real estate after moving out of their niche.
Two Guys was one of the first Walmarts.
Oh yeah, they were amazing. They were great.
That was my first job. My first job was I ran the fix shop at Two Guys in Glen Burnie.
I was there at the closing, and I tore down the fish department and brought the tanks and stands and.
Did you really?
Oh yeah, I got those 5-rack tall 10-gallon and 20-gallon stands.
Yeah, I remember that. Right.
And I still have an air compressor from the Two Guys, the big rotary job. Oh. And I brought it home, and I was going to hook up my aquariums to it, and I looked at it, and it takes 500 watts. And I said, no, we can't do this. I still have it.
Amazing.
The output's a garden hose. It actually feeds out of a garden hose to run your whole fish department or a whole fish shop.
Can you turn the camera around in the app? No, because the app is electronic. So if I move the camera.
Ooh, spooky effects for Halloween.
Doesn't really do anything.
the ghost of Father Fish for Halloween. Trick or treat by the way, trick or treat everybody out there.
Yeah,
Just
that's tonight,
happy
isn't
Halloween.
it? That's right.
Send me candy. My family refuses to give me any because I'm diabetic. So please send me candy. No, I'm kidding. I really can't do that. I'll die.
Blur, none. Here we go. I got
There we go.
it.
We're home.
I got it. Ah, genetics. Anyway, yeah, the industry started with people like Merle Cohen. Did you know Merle?
No, I didn't.
I met him. Merle Cohen was in Baltimore. He had a little shop on Green Mountain Avenue called the Aquarium. And it was he and his brother. And his brother moved to Florida and started a farm. And was shipping, he was raising fish on the farm and shipping them up to Baltimore by truck. They were driving them up. And Merle in Baltimore was wholesaling to the other shops in Baltimore. Now, at that point in time, there were more than 40 tropical fish stores in Baltimore.
I don't remember those days.
This was in the 1950s.
Mm-hmm. Well, the 60s, I recall, but yeah.
Yeah, it bled into the 60s. It all changed in the 60s, but most of these shops opened in the 50s, some in the 40s. There was one called Acme. Fellow Jetster, who is that? Is your mic working?
He has his mic turned off.
Huh.
He's sneaking up on us.
Yeah, I don't know who that is. You shouldn't be able to get in.
He's in. He's just got his mic and camera off.
I know, but I've got supposedly I've got a oh well, never mind. I don't know what there is. You're gonna have to identify yourself, Jester.
Lucky people in the audience are watching us learn as we go.
Yeah. I don't even know. I can send him a. He's gone.
Okay.
Okay, well, that's good. I thought I had this set up. Oh, there's Luke. Good.
Hey, Luke.
Now
We were missing you.
now we got control.
Well, I don't fit the description here as far as the whole breeder thing, but I seen you were having some technical difficulties. So
Right.
Father Fish got trapped in the Matrix.
yeah, it happens.
Yeah, I created a background, which is kind of cool.
I
And then I
seen that.
couldn't figure out how to get rid of it.
So
I finally worked that out. Somebody was just up. Now I
Yeah.
thought I turned on the.
I think it was Craig. He was trying to. So he was asking if you can flip the camera, like if you're on a mobile device, and you can. However, aside from that, RJ joined first, so he's the moderator. So in order for you to have your options, Father Fish, you have to have RJ click on your name over there and give you moderator rights.
Do you
Happily.
Do you
Click on
understand
your
what I'm
name.
saying?
Hang on.
That little king crown next to his name means he's in charge.
Oh. When I try to click on, let me see if I can do that.
If you just go down to the bottom where it shows the two little men next to the hand raise, then you can click on Father Fish.
Participants.
It'll give you 3 dots in a blue box, and you can grant him rights there.
I've got invite people, performance settings, view full screen.
Not those 3 dots. You want to click on the 2 little men you see to the left of that, 2 or 3 icons.
Okay.
Click on that one, and then it should pop up with a sidebar for you.
That's Luke Father Fish.
Okay. Now what?
Click on Father Fish's name, and then it should give you 3 dots to the right, or hover over it, and it should give you 3 dots to the right of his name.
I'm not getting that. Let me just drop out and come back in. How's that? Will that work?
That'll work, yeah.
Okay. I think I can do that.
That would have been easier. I don't know why you didn't suggest that from the get-go.
Well, because I'm following your lead. You're the expert here.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so it looks like it probably made you the moderator now.
Whatever.
You should have, yeah, you have the crown, so you're in charge.
How are you?
Pretty good, you?
I'm okay. My blood pressure went back up. I thought I was getting control of it.
You got it.
Right back up.
Well, your blood pressure probably went up because of all the technology-related things.
Well, that could be. Yeah, there's been a lot of trauma lately.
Well, I've decided it's better to have blood pressure than to not have blood pressure.
That's
So,
There is that.
Some blood pressure is better than no blood pressure.
right. Let's go with that for now. There's a point in life, right? You just get to a certain age where every day you get up and something hurts is another day you got up and you move on.
Yeah, right. That's kind of where I'm at. I was talking to a friend about that this morning, and he's in his late 40s, early 50s.
Lucky man.
Yeah, so he has no sense of what I'm talking about.
Okay, so I'm going to hop back out here and hop back into YouTube. Now you have all your options that you're used to, Father Fish, since you're moderated.
One other.
Mhm.
The security option.
Oh, the lobby. Yeah.
Okay.
If you go down,
Enable lobby. I just did that.
He's quick. You guys are both quicker than I am.
Okay, so that's all right. So
now it'll
You're old
ask
enough
it.
to learn to fake it. That's what it comes down to.
really,
There's only so many buttons you can press.
at any one time.
So yeah, I think Craig was just trying to jump in. So when you do access this on mobile, if you want to join and talk to Father Fish or show your aquarium, at the bottom of the screen there's 3 dots next to the end call button, and if you click on those and then toggle camera, it'll reverse your camera and show your rear camera, so you can show your aquarium or whatever you're looking at.
Talking about your telephone.
Yep.
Oh dear.
So okay, I'll catch up with you guys.
Yes, sir.
No problem. See ya.
Yeah, you can try to come up, Craig, if you want. We'll see if it works. It may not, but it may. You never know. We got him frozen, and I think he's going away. Stop video. Disable camera of this participant. That didn't do anything.
All these poor people watching us while we're fumbling with the technology. Hang in there, folks.
How do we get rid of the big H in the circle?
I think it drops on its own eventually.
Well, but it's not. There it is. I guess It's not up to me to do it. Luke left me. All right, now RJ's leaving. So back to the topic at hand. Anyway, so these farmers started. Guys realized they can make a buck by digging a hole in the ground in the Ruskin area of Florida. Now, why Ruskin? Well, because Ruskin has a 3-foot deep layer of clay that's about 15 feet down into the ground. So they get a and the water table runs on top of that. So you dig a hole about 10 foot deep, and depending on how wet the water table is, you'll get 5 to 10 feet of water in a pond.
That's nice.
The water is going through it, but very slowly. It's part of the Everglades system. The Everglades used to be far more massive than it is today. It went virtually all the way up to Tampa. And if you have any sense of Florida, the Everglades now starts well below Naples, which is 150 miles south of Tampa. All of that is now above water. It's all dry land, and the coast was not affected so much, but inland was, and not all the way inland. It was like sections anyway. So in where was I saying this was? Ruskin. In the Ruskin area, which is midway between Bradenton and Tampa. It's about 20 miles or so south of Tampa. So major metropolitan area, just south of that is farm country, undeveloped back in the 50s. Farmers went in there and for cheap bought up land and put in ponds and started raising guppies and mollies and platies, and then later angels, tetras, certain amounts of tetras. Craig is here.
Danios were big already by that point. Swordtails.
I think Craig should be here. I don't know why he's not here. I thought I admitted him just then. I haven't got this figured out. Anyway, they started, people started building fish farms. 2 people want to join the meeting. View lobby. There's the lobby. Both of them are called Craig. Admit. What's these 3 dots? Chat. Admit. We got it.
Good morning.
All right.
Hey, Greg.
Good morning.
Now we're
Morning, evening here.
We got half of your face. Can you move over a little or get your camera in front of your face better?
He's showing off his fish tanks.
I see that. Admit. I think we got it twice now.
There we go.
Good morning.
Hey, Craig.
There he is.
Where are you in the world that it's morning? Craig, where are you that it's morning?
He's in Australia.
Australia. Good day, mate.
Yes, it's only 10 2:30.
Yeah, we got you live. We can hear you. We've now lost it. Shall I continue with this? So gradually in the 50s, an industry in fish began to build. By the mid 50s, they were flying fish out of Florida around the country. So it started getting serious at that point. They were no longer driving them 24 hours. They were flying them in a matter of 4 to 6 hours and getting almost anywhere. It was East Coast. It was not West Coast. East of the Mississippi. They didn't go as far west as Chicago. It was the East Coast and primarily New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Maryland, D.C., and Northern Virginia. That was pretty much the market. It moved west to Ohio, got into Michigan, but initially in the 50s, that's where the industry was. That's where the hobbyists were. It's where the shops were. And then we talked about it earlier. Two guys created a new marketing strategy. This is right at the time where things had really begun to explode. And local shops were making scads of money. The local shop owner was becoming wealthy. And of course, when you got that kind of money, people are going to look for ways to get a piece of it. And what happened was there were people who found ways to get a very large piece of it by creating various businesses like Two Guys that consolidated. It was kind of a glorified department store.
Oh yeah, it was big.
Yeah,
It was good stuff too, and cheap stuff
it was American made
at that point. Yeah.
at that point, right?
Well, do you know how Two Guys started? It was two guys of Harrison.
They were in New Jersey, right?
And what they were doing was they were selling damaged refrigerators, stoves, and things with scratches. They were selling seconds.
Scratch and dent. I'll be darned.
Scratch and Dent down in Newark, and that was their first store. And then, of course, they blew out to the nationwide variety, department store,
Well,
which they all but invented.
right. So once that happened, then a dry goods industry had begun to develop. There were people manufacturing filters, aquariums, all the little stuff, pen plaques.
Metaframe.
Early players in that. Metaframe was another one. That's right. Metaframe was making the tanks. Penplex was making all the nickel dime stuff.
They were also making all the power filters, the silent flow or whatever. The magic mirror, Dynaflow with magic magnet drive,
right?
Which didn't leak on the floor. And then they had the Hush pumps. Hush was the first quiet air pump you could put in your bedroom.
Yeah.
If you remember the air pumps before that, you had to plumb your air from the basement.
Well, they were piston pumps. You've had the piston pumps.
I have two working. Not that I'm running them.
Yeah, I've got a couple of them too. Silent Giant.
I have three of those. I have three. One rebuilt and running.
I don't have any of those.
Yeah, I still have.
I never had one come in the shop. I had the pistons. A couple of them came in. Nobody ever brought a Silent Giant in.
You know what went wrong with them? If you have a silent giant, you take it apart, and comes some screws, and then all this sticky gravel comes out. It's disgusting.
It's
But
sad.
it comes out. There's a little coffee can inside, and you open that up, and there's a little airline. There's a little airline, and in that airline they put some filter floss, and that clogs. That's it. Take the airline out, put another piece of airline in. Probably don't replace the filter floss, and your silent giant will run just like the day it was new.
Honest to God.
Yep.
I never took one apart.
Yeah, I did. It's a project because that sticky gooey stuff comes out. That's kind
Yeah,
of
I
annoying.
heard they're full of sand.
It's like gravel with honey. It's pretty weird.
Yuck.
But
Anyway, that's what was happening. Early on, and through the 50s, into the 60s. The 60s were the heyday of the industry. Merle Cohen he started in his garage, went to a shop, went to a wholesale operation that was 20,000 square feet. Massive wholesale operation. And he was doing dry goods and fish. He took over a big warehouse out in Catonsville, I think, right after they built the Baltimore Beltway. Huge operation. I went in there once, and he had just gotten a shipment of big fish, 3-foot, 4-foot fish. He was doing saltwater in the 50s.
wow, nobody was doing saltwater successfully in the 50s.
Well,
But
he
yeah,
wasn't doing it successfully. He was doing it. In fact, I was selling him oyster crabs that I caught on my grandfather's crabbing oyster boat in the winter, acclimated them to aquarium water, and took them in and sold. I was making 10 cents a piece, selling them 500 at a crack, making $50 a week.
yep. It's
In
good
the
pocket change back then. Yeah.
55s. Yeah, that wasn't bad. 1955, $50. That was a full-time salary for a
Damn,
lot.
yeah, definitely more than a high school or college kid was going to make on a full-time
Yeah.
job.
Amazing.
So
So that built and grew and exploded. But what was happening on the local farms was they were just cranking them out. And they developed systems whereby they would grow out fish, hold back a certain amount as breeding stock, start them up the next spring in a house. If they built a house that they could heat, they would start in early winter, late winter, breeding them out, moving them out to the ponds, growing them up, harvesting them, marketing, selling them out, hold some back. Year after year after year, they did that, and it was a one generation per 3 to 4 months.
right.
They could get 3 to 4 generations in a year growing out these fish by the hundreds of thousands.
And they were nice fish too. There was some gorgeous
They
molly
were nice fish. They were wonderful
swordtails.
fish.
Guppies, not so much. The guppies weren't that fancy back in the day. They were
Well, yeah, they weren't. That's true. Yeah, the German half black, which was called a German half black because it was the first hybridized guppy, line bred guppy, that was shipped in from Germany. From Germany, it's half black with a red tail, iridescent blue dorsal. Pretty fish. It's still around. You can still find it.
I've seen them. Not often anymore, but they're around. Like
I,
the bingo.
I used to make about $40-50 a week while I was in graduate school raising those things, selling them. That was in the early 60s.
Yep.
Mid 60s, yeah. So it went gangbusters for nearly 20 years. And then gradually, a whole string of big box stores began to spring up.
Hmm.
Pet specialty box stores, pet box stores,
That killed the hobby.
dogs, cats, fish, birds, reptiles, all the dry goods. They took over the dry goods, and they could get margins because they could buy at such numbers from the manufacturers that they could sell cheaper than the local shop. So they really killed the backbone. They broke the back of the local shop. The local shop could still sell fish, but that was not enough to be able to make any money to
No,
be
you
able to
can't.
pay the bills.
There's a huge, there's
Yeah,
a huge, there's a huge profit on tropical fish. There really is. When you look at it, I saw the dealer's price list back in the 70s, and a $2 fish was about 10 cents wholesale. But you still can't make a living making $1.80 or $1.90 on a sale. It just isn't possible. You have
yeah.
to.
If your nut is 5,000 a month, that's a hell of a lot of guppies to sell.
That's a lot of guppies. Yeah. I mean, if you can't sell the filters, you can't sell the hoods, the lights, the stands, the tanks.
The systems, that's right.
You're not. That's what killed both the local pet shop.
That's true. The only ones that have been able to survive are the saltwater coral shops. And they're surviving because they've got a lock on variety. It's not what's the word, scalable business.
Yeah, and I haven't seen them. I've seen them come and go too over the years.
Well, they do, but they'll last longer if they've got a clientele that's willing to support them, and that's always the key. What I discovered with we'll get back to this thesis in a minute. What I discovered with my shop was I would get a new person in. They would set up. I'd get them set up, be able to get a 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe $1,000 sale. They'll come back and get fish and plants. Maybe come back 1 or 2 or 3 times after that to add to their stock. And if they were successful, if they lived, and most of my customers did all right, because I make sure they got a good start, they would disappear. I would not see them again for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. There was no residual business. So what the box store did was they sold, and they do it today. They sell damaged fish, and this kind of goes back to the point we started on, which is the whole genetics issue. What's happened in the mass marketing segment of the hobby, which is the big farms and the Far Eastern farms, they're cranking out numbers.
Massive.
As big a numbers as it gets. It's mass production. They're selling cheap. They've got less and less money going into maintaining their stock. So you're getting a poorer and poorer quality of animal that's being produced. It's going into the big box stores. It's meeting their needs precisely because you get it there when it's 2, 3 months old. It's looking good. It's healthy. It's at the peak of its growth. They put them in their tanks. They sell them a month later. The fish are dying, or sooner. I mean, if they come in sick, they're dying before that. But genetically, they're dying off, and so people are coming back in the store to get the guarantee. Now, the guarantee is based on a couple of things. Number one, as RJ said, the guarantee is based on the fact that the shop is paying, the big box stores in today's numbers, they're paying 50 cents to $1 for a fish that they're selling between $5 and $8.
That's about right.
So their markup is about 500%.
At least.
They're losing half of those right off the top. So that reduces their net gain to about 250, maybe 300% markup. But by that fish dying within 30 days, the customer is back in the shop, and what happens? The first thing that happens is if it's a decent clerk, they'll say, "Oh, he has kleptomania. You need to treat him with this and this and this." And each of those thises are $20 a pop. So there's 20, 40, $60. And oh, look, we got for your kitty cat.
Yep.
It's another $20. They estimate, and this is the principle, the Walmart principle is when you walk in there, you're going to walk out with a minimum of 3 items that were not on your list if you had a list.
That is the plan.
That's the way the big box store works. They get you back in, and you buy. You buy items you had no intention of buying because it's what's that called? A spontaneous buy. Oh, what's the word for it? There's a word for that. Anyway,
Impulse buy.
yeah, that's where that markup comes back in. So a dead fish is worth more to that big box store than a live fish is.
Well, not only that, but quite honestly, I've been in some big box stores and they have a central filter and no sterilizer. Which what that tells you, if you ever go into a big box store, and that's
Right.
that means they get one sick guppy that comes into the store, and that's going to spread through the filter system to every aquarium, and every fish in the
That's right.
store is going to be
That's done
carried.
deliberately.
That's what's going to happen to you. You walk in, you might get lucky once or twice, but the odds go against you with every fish you buy, and eventually,
Right, that's right.
And it's-
Rescuing bettas is the worst thing you can possibly do. All of these people who are out there rescuing bettas are promoting sick bettas.
oh, I'm going to make it even worse. I went into one of these stores, and all their bettas were the store. I was setting up aquariums, and I didn't have a starter fish, so I walked into a big box store, and I'm like, I should be able to find one healthy fish in this store. That should be easy. They had a whole bunch of tanks, and I went through all the tanks, and I realized that all the fish were sick. That it was single filter system. There was not a healthy fish in the store, so I went to the bettas, and they're in little jars, and they were all sick too. And I asked the girl, I said, "Where do you get the water from for the bettas?" She says, "We take it out of our tank."
Fish tanks, right?
They could have used tap water. The water in that area is good. Same water I have. They could have just filled those jars with tap, but nope. They went to their sick tanks, and they literally infected every individual betta. There was not a healthy fish in this store. And when I asked her, she told me, she said, "We've talked to home office about this several times."
It's policy. It's home office policy.
And in the meantime, she's dipping sick fish out of aquariums, putting them in bags, and sending them home to kill off all the fish in somebody's home aquarium.
Yeah,
It's not just they sold you a sick fish; they just murdered all your healthy ones.
right.
It's not just maybe they replaced the one for free, but the other 20 fish they just killed, you're buying again. You're paying for.
Okay, so where do we go from here? What's happening to counteract this? Well, there are things that are happening. They're local hobbyists who are paying attention to what's going on. We see them here on YouTube. We see guys who develop fish rooms. they'll have 50 to 100 tanks, and they work really hard at finding and developing healthy fish, healthy stock. That's to the good. That's getting healthy fish into the hands of those people who are taking the extra step to find out what really is out there.
But even then, it's a stopgap measure, because as a breeder, the problem I have is I'll go out and I get 1 or 2 pairs of something, and they're healthy and they're good breeders and they're wonderful fish. But then as the generations go, all my genetics are based on 2 fish or 4 fish, and that's going to get old over time. You know, even if you select, and the worst problem is when you cull. When you're culling fish out, you're taking genes out of your gene pool,
Right.
which may be improving it, but over time you're also making it worse, because that gene that you lost is never coming back.
Right.
So honestly, I kind of don't cull much, because I'd rather have a couple less colorful fish, and I'd rather have maybe a couple mutants in the bunch than to, unless it's an extremely screwed up fish, which I won't sell, but still, you know, I'll keep it in the gene pool. Because if you take too many genes out of your gene pool, you're going to lose them. I mean, the best breeder, one of the best breeders in the hobby, Rosario Lacorte, and he explained to me his philosophy: only breed best to best, best to best, best to best, best to best. And he has the most beautiful fish in the world. He literally has the most beautiful tropical fish. But then when you talk to him, you get to know him after a while, he'll tell you, well, I had that fish, I had it going for 8 years, and they all became sterile and died.
Yep.
Or they all got mutated and died. Because as much as
not introducing new stock, you got to be able to introduce new stock.
and that's the problem with the home Aquarius. Yes, for a while you can get beautiful stuff. They're gonna, and it's worth paying for it. Remember, if I'm breeding a fish for you, or I'm breeding a fish in my house, I have very good quarantine. I'm taking good care of them. I want them to grow fast. I want them to be healthy. I want them to sell to you. But the problem is, once they go to the pet store, and if they go into a tank that's had sick fish in it before, or worse yet, they go to a wholesaler, it's not my problem anymore, but now it's yours.
Yeah. Grant Wood is saying, what if I buy off the truck before they put them in the tank? Well, then you're buying the chain problem. And that chain starts with the farmer, who's probably located in Thailand. And he's probably a small farm operation where he's pulling fish out of a central pond in his little 1 acre plot of land with all the goats and sheep and chickens.
But he's probably still pretty good. He's still probably taking pretty good care of his fish. He's feeding them wild mosquitoes more than likely.
And dabbing. They're eating while they're grown up. Those fish go to a buyer.
Right.
The buyer then sells to a wholesaler who may also be an importer or exporter, rather, but may not be. There may be another step between the wholesaler and the exporter. The exporter sends them to a port of entry in another country where they are reboxed, rebagged by a broker. The broker then sends them to a wholesaler. Generally, it's a large importer who sells to wholesalers. That wholesaler then sells to local shops.
So your fish have gone through 15 aquariums,
Yeah,
which were probably not properly cleaned.
and they have not been fed in the whole process.
Some have been fed. I mean, that's
Rarely, rarely.
Some have been fed, but not by much. No. I mean, they want the fish to look good when it gets to you, but the reality is that your fish have had a real rough time, And one of the things that I used to do when I know I'm getting imported fish is I'd keep a really nice quarantine tank with a lot of plants and a lot of microfauna and a lot of, a little bit warmer than I'd normally keep it. And I put the fish in that kind of a quarantine so they could de-stress.
Right.
And that, as much as quarantine protected the fish from disease, it also protected them from the fish in the tank that they were going to go live with, so that they had the opportunity of getting healthy before they went back into competition with other fish.
Yeah.
So for people who do quarantine, we all tell you do quarantine, but we don't mean for you to throw your fish in a glass box and leave them there for a month. That's not, your
That's
fish are,
exactly right. Yeah, that doesn't help them a bit. Putting them
No.
through the same thing they've been going through really doesn't help. They need
Right.
to be in a healthy aquarium.
Yep. And so a quarantine tank, you want to use disposable plants. I mean, if you're growing Java moss, you probably have truckloads of it like I do. You want to use plants you can flush. You want to use a gravel, not a sand, because you can rinse it with bleach. Nothing colored. If you use a gravel, I mean, you're not worried about this tank being like a long-term tank, because you're going to
Yeah,
knock
it's going to be 30 to 60 days, maybe 90 days.
Right. And if the fish gets sick, the answer is you try to treat him. You can't cure him. You dump half a gallon of bleach in, soak everything in bleach. You got a new tank, reintroduce your bacteria, put new plants in, and you're ready to go again. So it's a different kind of a setup than the permanent father fish setup. But it shouldn't be a glass box. A lot of people think
and it's not their final destination.
no, they're only going to be in there for a while.
To get them in that father fish tank.
Yeah, that's the goal, to get them in there. But the quarantine tank, too many people, because Father Fish and I work with new people. Father Fish had a store. I'm doing it online. I've done it for a store too. I used to go and consult for a store. And people, when you say quarantine, they immediately think glass box with nothing in it. No filter, no heater, no nothing. Just throw the fish in there, wait 6 weeks to see if they die. And all the people come back and tell you, yeah, the fish died. Yeah, quarantine's great. The fish all died. That's not the object of the exercise, folks. The object is to get healthy fish for your tank.
Greenwood trying to buy some fish from a farm in Ontario won't sell directly because they don't have a store. Technically, he won't sell directly because he sells in bag lots of 1 to 500, and he's not willing to sell 2 or 3 or 4 fish. He's not a local shop.
It's not worth it.
It's a pain in the ass for him to spend. The time he spends with you selling you 10 fish, he could spend selling 1,000 fish or more to a local shop and make hundreds of dollars.
Yep. Even selling to small shops, I used to sell to a very large pet store, kind of a pet supermarket. And, I'd call up, say, what do you need? And they'd say, give me 10, 20, 30, 40 pairs or something, whatever I had. And they could handle, we'll take 10 pairs a week or 20 pairs a week.
Right.
Still, they were local. But you get a small shop that's 30 miles away and they say, can you deliver 2 pair? By the time you get out there and drop off 2 pair of fish, even if you're making a decent profit margin on the pair, your gas money eats it up.
Yeah, exactly.
I did it for friends, because I knew guys in the business, but it wasn't worth doing in general.
The biggest wholesalers who sell to shops, when they get their fish in, I'm not talking about the little guys, the big ones. When they get their fish in, they throw them in water that has 0.15 salt. They dump bags of salt in their water, and they keep the temperature down below 70, like 65 to 68.
Yep.
They do that in order to get rid of bacteria and control bacteria. It
I
also
remember that. Yeah.
puts tremendous stress on the fish. So they have to be able to move these fish out of that house within the week. A big wholesaler will move fish in on the weekend. By Friday, the house is empty. They're stripping their tanks, setting everything up new for shipments starting on Saturday and Sunday.
If you're lucky, they're stripping the tanks in between. Otherwise, they're just throwing more fish into the same tank that they had.
Yeah, they may do that for a while. Eventually, they'll strip it down because they're set up to do it. You know,
Right.
they drain it if they've got an advanced system. Now, there still are big wholesalers around that have aquariums rather than acrylic systems.
hmm
If they have aquariums, they're not emptying them every week.
No,
Same
no.
with the farmers, for that matter.
I had a friend of mine. I had a friend of mine who had 300 aquariums in his shop. He was doing the AKA New and Rare Killings, and he was doing changing 10 tanks a day, so that he could get through once a month changing all the tanks,
Yeah.
knock them down. And he finally, after about 3 years, they found him laying on the floor in his shop with a heart attack.
I believe it.
And he did recover. He's still alive. He's still with us. He's a wonderful person. But he was going through hell. And I will tell you, there was a time at which there wasn't a fish that he was selling that wasn't sick, because it just was impossible to control. when
Yeah,
you fit
exactly.
in
Right.
the world.
Right. You get too old and too tired to do it anymore.
Yeah, it's the problem is, as much as you guys want really healthy fish, everyone out there does. Nobody wants to spend $10 on a zebra fish. Let's be honest about it. You just don't want to pay the kind of money that it's going to cost for someone to really take the kind of care.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, here's a good example: redfish, bluefish, out in Seattle. He's importing from Poland some of the best fish in the world from the best farmers, the best wholesalers, the best shippers. He sells those fish, and they're remarkable at a premium. You're not going to spend $1, $2 on a little tetra. You're going to spend $10 to $15
That's right.
on that little tetra, but it will be the best quality fish that's available, and that's what's happening. There are breeders, wholesalers, farmers now in various countries around the world who are focusing on very high level, very sophisticated operations, not geared for numbers, but geared for quality.
Yep. Unfortunately,
Is another matter. Now, there's another thing that's happening that's equally important, and that is Brazil is finally opened up.
no.
They got rid of their white paper and now have an endangered species list, which is the way it should have been to begin with. We fought this here a year ago. We beat them back, thank God. But for 20 years, Brazil was under an authority that said you may only ship these fish. The farmers and other people in the industry, hobbyists, scientists, finally forced through a change in that. And it's now open. They now can collect and ship wild fish so long as they're not on an endangered list.
Wow, because something, they actually came a couple of years ago, and they actually busted people I know
I know it, right.
for having fish that came out of Brazil.
Exactly
And
right.
there was a time that a lot of people I know had fish from Brazil, and now we just won't. My club just won't import them at all. It's Brazilian. No, thank you.
Yeah, now it's different. Now what's happening, and this is remarkable, there are, they estimate thousands of undiscovered species of tetra. Just one family of fish, thousands of species that are beginning to come out at the rate of 5 to 10 a month. 5 to 10 new species of fish. And some of them are absolutely spectacular.
That's amazing. That's just beautiful. That's
It
wonderful.
really is. It's you know, finding ways to get these fish is still problematic. The local wholesalers, the big wholesalers, have not got their toe in the water yet. They're still not getting them. It's the smaller specialty wholesalers, small operations, and local communities, people who are popping up, who are willing to spend $5 to $10,000 to get a shipment in.
Well, after what we just went through a couple years ago with the our own government coming after us for Brazilian law, which is just inherently wrong.
Right, right.
But you know, as much as, by the way, an endangered species that can be protected in the wild belongs there. I'm not saying that we're ever going to do a better job in the aquarium hobby of keeping this fish going. We're not. But there's a lot of fish that are not endangered that can come in small numbers, especially like killies, which we breed ourselves once they get here, that aren't going to hurt the environment in Brazil. So,
Exactly. Right.
you know, I mean, things were bad once when they just poisoned whole rivers and they just netted everything up and shipped it. But on the other hand, there's a happy medium where we can still get good fish and decent.
That's right. It's coming around. Brentwood, apply for a freshwater retail permit. No special conditions for getting it, depending on what you're in Canada. Might be a problem in Canada. Look into that. You could do it in virtually any state in the U.S. You can get a permit, and there are no restrictions on that. You can
No.
do it. You can do it as a hobbyist.
You can, but you, the one,
That gets you that. Now the only issue is you're gonna need to apply for a retail sales permit if there's sales tax in your state.
no, you can get around that if you're not selling the fish. But what you can do is you can get the import permit. That's all you really need to get them in. Once you get them, you can distribute them through a club or keep them yourself, breed them,
You'll be
whatever.
able to get a permit. Once you do that, then you can go back to this farmer and show him your paperwork, and you'll be good to go.
Yeah, the thing,
Might cost you $100.
I think it's 200 now. Last I heard, my friend who had one, it was 200.
Where? In Jersey? Yeah, that could be.
That's federal because they, he picked.
I wasn't talking about importing.
Oh, okay.
About retail sales.
No, it's just to get the fish through the airport. That's going to cost you $200, and you got to go to an international airport, and you got to wait at customs, and
That's a whole other can of worms. He's got a local farmer he wants to buy from.
oh, okay, yeah. No, then he's probably going to have to deal with import. As far, but still, if he's in Canada, he's still got to deal with whatever the import, rules are there.
Anyway, look into getting a permit. Retail license, right.
And do keep in mind, you're going to go to an airport, and you're going to have to
He's
learn.
got a farmer down the road he wants to buy from.
Oh, that shouldn't be a problem. That the farmer
The
should.
farmer won't sell to him because he does not have a retail sales license. He's not a shop, in other words.
Yeah, well, I can see that. I mean, you don't want to, if your regular customer finds out that you're selling fish cheaper behind his back.
Well, there's the problem, of course. And
Yeah, I
it's not
mean,
yeah, and your regular customer is is the shop
right.
that's buying from you, and you're selling to me, and you're also selling to my customer at the same price. No, thank you very much. I won't deal with you anymore.
Yeah, no, I did. I dealt with some big stores, and there were certain fish that if I had them, they'd buy them, and that was the deal. Don't even show these to any other store. If you got them, they're ours, and I got it. I got a premium for that. I really did. I'll admit that because they just wanted. Oh yeah, we can sell them. We want them. Whatever you breed, we'll take them all because we don't want the shop down the road to have the same fish. So if your wholesaler is selling fish directly to your customers behind your back, you're not going to use that wholesaler.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Anyway, we're at 8:06. Are you burned to a frazzle yet?
Oh, we're still working on genetics. How we got there?
Oh God, yeah, we haven't finished that, have we?
We haven't actually gotten into the genetics. Well, let me take it over for a minute.
Yeah, by all means.
Basically, what happens is when you're breeding fish, you got a limited stock. We all start with a limited stock. Even a big breeder they may start with 10 or 20 pairs, but they're going to interbreed in as you cull, as you select, as you ship, your gene pool gets small. The fish are going to start getting spine deformities, color deformities, and eventually they're not actually even going to reproduce. This is going to be a normal problem. But again, you're an exporter or you're a breeder, you're a seller, you're not constantly replenishing your stock. And in some cases, stock is hard to find. Fish that were common years ago are getting hard to find. So there's no one going out into the wilderness to catch new zebra danios. Okay, that's the bottom line. Nobody's out there collecting them anymore. So all the zebra danios are in the hobby, and they've all been in the hobby for 20 or 30 or 50 years. And they're starting to show that genetic degradation. So it's one of those problems where you're getting the quality of fish is slowly going down. Breeders aren't really addressing it rapidly. So some of the fish you're getting are going to have problems. The other fish you see that have problems are fish that weren't raised properly. Too much nitrates in the water, poor water conditions. That's going to be bad. The other thing the breeders are doing is a lot of breeders will breed biggest to biggest, quickest growing to quickest growing, because that's the most profitable fish, the one that gets biggest fastest. That's also the fish that's going to die the youngest.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, you see this even in like the pet trade in feeder rats. Feeder rats make beautiful pets but die very young because they're selected to grow fast, and because they grow so fast, they get tumors. And this is one of the problems that you're getting is what's good for me as a breeder is to breed a fish that gets, I don't want to do an angel fish that takes 8 months to color up. I want to breed angel fish that are going to color up in 3 weeks or 4 weeks or a month. So I'm going to basically be picking those that grow the fastest, not those that are going to live the longest. So genetics over time is unfortunately the genetics that's best for the breeder, not necessarily that's best for you. Also, again, the most colorful fish. If I can come up with an electric blue strain of darn near anything, okay, people are going to buy it. If that fish is going to get really warped and can't reproduce and is going to be have all kinds of health issues, that's not my problem. You see it in the pet store and it's electric blue, and you're for sure going to want one of those. And I'm going to sell it and I'm going to make my money, and I know I'm going to have to cull a lot of these screwed up fish, but I know I'm going to make a nice living selling you those electric blue, whatever they are. Right. Or hot pink or whatever the thing is. So, years ago, we used to get a lot of wild fish. when Father Fish and I were younger, even two guys was full of wild caught fish.
Yeah,
Wild caught fish. I mean, you had armored cat. You had even those hatchet fish.
a lot
Oh
of
my God, they
that's
used to
right.
steal tanks of hatchet fish. They were all wild caught.
Yeah,
Even the Corridorus, they were mostly
Right.
all wild caught at the time. You went in there and you got so many wonderful, healthy fish, at least genetically healthy fish, because they came from the Amazon River where the gene pool was endless and deep. So, that's one of the problems when you go to the breeders. That breeder might be selling you, a zebra danio that hasn't had a wild gene in its strain since Father Fish and I were teenagers.
right,
That's a long time ago, kids.
right. Luke, Craig,
Oh, Luke.
Craig
So
was trying to come up, and he didn't hang out long enough.
I see that. So I had a question. There was a fish that we were talking about the other night, and it started with an A, and it was super colorful.
Epistogramma
What is it?
wasn't an epistogramma.
I don't know. I'm gonna look.
That's a cichlid.
Oh, you know what? It was. It was.
APISTO, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. It was a trip. What was it? It was. I'm trying to remember the species. It
Hey,
was
guys.
a species I had not heard of. But
So
it's pretty. There are hundreds of. I don't know about hundreds. They're finding more and more of them. There are many species of Epistogramma. It's a big family of fish.
I did the Panduro some years ago. They were nice.
They're pretty.
It's a beautiful fish, but it laid its eggs. And the funniest one is I got successful when I took the parents out and I moved them to a bigger tank, figuring, well, they're just not breeding in this tank. They got great breeding colors. I never saw an egg. I couldn't find an egg. I don't know where they were laying them. And I took the parents out. And about 4 weeks later, I went to the empty tank that I took them out of. And there was a whole little school of baby epistogrammas swimming around in there.
Right.
I didn't fed them or anything. They were just living on the Java moss.
Yeah.
well,
So
I need something different. I'm down to one Dorkorami that's left out of 5. So one.
Yeah,
That's
you're not going to replace them, right?
Yeah. No.
You
I'm not
like
replacing-
Epistos. You could also try German blue ram. It's a pretty fish.
beautiful,
Yeah,
but it's hard to do. The problem is you can't get good stock anymore. Most of what comes in from
it's
the
hard to
Orient,
get good stuff.
really shabby.
You want to get a pair. I can get some. I can get decent stuff. There's a farm in Florida called Valley Farms. That,
Well, I've only got the 10-gallon to put something in, and right now there's a female betta in it. That blue one that's real, like, I don't know, really nice and small, and then there's 2 little guppies in it.
you want to breed bettas?
Not really. I don't want much work. I'm too busy doing other things.
No, there's no
Possible
work.
addiction.
There's no work.
What was that?
You start
What's
the male in a tank by himself. Float the female or put her alongside the tank so they can't get together until he blows a bubble nest. Once he's got a nest going, if you've been feeding her so she's egged up, you ought to see a white spot right at the ovipositor. If you see that white spot, she's nice and fat, put her in with them. They will spawn within hours. By the end of the day, you take her out, leave the male alone. 3 days later, you're going to have a little baby swimming around. Now, if you've got them in a food web tank, it'll take care of them.
Not all of them. No, you got way too many fry. You'll get about in a 10-gallon tank. You'll probably, if you take the male out and you do nothing, you'll probably get about 20, 25.
Well, and I've got 3 Amano shrimp in there. I don't know if that makes a difference.
More than enough.
Yeah, no, you're gonna, the thing is when bettas lay their eggs, you get hundreds, maybe thousands. The whole tank is swarming with those baby bettas. And you think it's same thing like I bred pearl gouramis a couple times. You know, I've got a 3-gallon tank and there's plenty of room for the fry, and all of a sudden you realize there's no water left. It's literally all wiggling with thousands of fry. It's
Well,
like,
I'm not looking to create more work for myself, but I do like the idea though of, you know, like if everybody chips in a little bit and sells some fish on Father Fish, I think we can get fish that aren't all screwed up from these stores. So I have considered, you know, getting a couple tanks going just for that, because just like you guys were talking about, it's the same concept with the door gourami. They're perfect. They know that the genetics are bad, whatever's going to happen. They're going to last a few months and they're going to die. They get $15 a piece out of them. Everybody buys them because they're super colorful compared to all the other fish that are there for the most part. And I was thinking the other direction. They're just outside of the warranty period when they die. You come back in, they tell you too bad, so sad, and you know, it's the perfect fish for $15. They probably pay $1 for them.
Yeah, that too. They pay about.
I usually have some killies in stock, you know, for people who might be interested in those. But
Yeah, I'm looking at some of his killings.
yeah, killies are another.
What are killies? How do you spell it?
Oh,
Oh, you need to look at killings. Killie. It's a huge.
killifish.
There are a number of genera of them.
All right. So what do I got?
They're all over the world.
Those are super.
I've got some. I definitely have some Austral. Aphyosemian Austral. You might want to type that in. I've got some of those.
What is it?
APHYOSYMION.
And then Austral, AUSTRAILE.
ALE, right.
So what's the deal with those? Are they like a schooling fish, or they look?
No, they're basically you plunk two in a tank and you feed them mostly live foods or meaty foods, and they lay eggs. And if you get enough Java moss, you'll just get a lot of them, and they're beautiful fish. They're small. They're about an inch long, perfect for a 10, even a 5. I bred mine in a 2.5, and I've got 40 of them in a 5.5. So I'm thinking that's a little bit crowded. They were all going to be going out before I injured my spine and couldn't deliver them. So I also have some Fungula Panchex Sheili, which are really pretty fish. They're blue. If you like blue versus red,
How do you spell it?
Clowns too.
How do you roughly spell it?
Yeah.
the clowns, there was somebody brought in a jar with 6 of them a couple of months ago, and they went for about $30 for the jar, and I didn't. They're big, tiny little guys, which was nice. They were nice fish, but someone outbid me on those. But there's a killie for every small aquarium. I mean, if you have 2.5 gallon, 5 gallon, 10 gallon, some of them are a lot of work to raise. Some are very exotic. The annuals, we have to take the eggs and dry them, and wet them, and then there's some you just throw a clump of Java moss in, and you just get lots and lots of fish.
Yeah.
And
I don't want anything that I have to feed much that won't just eat off of the plants and stuff in the aquarium.
not in a 10-gallon tank. No.
Yeah, that's a good one though, because you can do a food web that they'll eat microscopically.
The babies will, yeah. The babies are going to eat off the Java moss. They're going to eat off the food web. The adults you're going to have to feed. I'll be honest. Even guppies in a 10-gallon tank, you can't really keep them going forever without some food. I mean, that's just not.
Yeah, I mean, I feed a little bit, but I don't want to feed daily. I don't want to feed every 2 or 3 days. Maybe like every 4th or 5th day is okay for me, but I just don't want to heavily feed them. The guppies that are in this aquarium now have been in there I'd say probably about 4 months, and I haven't, like I said, on that aquarium, I don't think I've fed a dozen times on it since I've had it going. But the saltwater,
we can do once a week, twice a week is more optimal, but small amounts.
Yeah, every 4 or 5 days.
Not big amounts.
With killifish, you're going to feed more because they lay eggs every day. That's the problem. It's not a fish that breeds
But if you got a worm culture going in there,
that's the way I do it.
How long does the killie live?
Huh?
How long do the killie live?
They're generational fish. Yeah, anywhere from one, from the shortest lived one is 13 weeks, soup to, birth to death. And the longest ones will make 2 to 3 years, but 2 years. It depends, which species you go for, but you're not looking to keep the same fish for 3 years.
Right.
The whole thing is it's a generational. You do generation after generation after generation. So
generation after generation in a 10-gallon tank sounds a little rough.
think about it with guppies. Okay,
That's
you bring home a pair of guppies, and in 10 years you can still have that same guppy, but not the two originals you started with.
Right.
Yeah,
their spines get a little crooked after a while.
Yeah, well,
That's what we've been talking about tonight.
We've got what are the tetras that are like clear? They they call them like weird names like skeleton and stuff like that.
glass fish.
So we got one that when we got 5 or 6 together, and it was at about a 45-degree angle swimming, and they said, "Oh, it's not going to last, a week." It's been months now, and that thing it's just swimming like this.
Yep, it's got a swim bladder. One of the things people think of, and that, by the way,
they can eat.
We spot feed him, and he hangs out over the bubble filter to give himself a little buoyancy.
Julian in 90 has a question here I want to get at. It's got a 29-gallon with 6 puffers, 3 tetras, planted, no nitrates or nitrites. Would you recommend liquid fertilizer or more feeding? I'm afraid my plants will die. Your plants are absorbing the ammonia that the fish are producing before it's converted back by bacteria to nitrates. That's why you've got no nitrates. If you did not have the plants in there, you would have nitrates and nitrates.
Right.
The plants are absorbing it all. So you've got a perfectly balanced tank. Not a thing wrong with it. Don't you dare put liquid fertilizer. Thank you.
I agree with Father Fish, and that's a rare thing. But yeah, we're both on the same page on that one. Don't go out and stump. Look, let me explain this to those of you listening who don't understand the theory. Plant fertilizer is fish waste. It's toxic to fish.
Concentrated waste, yeah.
It's concentrated waste. You are dumping fish waste into your aquarium. This is not a plan. This is not a good plan.
So thinking the tiniest drop, not the cap full or the
No, stop yourself.
You don't need
bad. No, when you, I know you want to do it. You saw the puffer person on another YouTube channel who's selling you something.
Oh my gosh!
Simple and green or whatever, and he was, no, God bless him. He's a lovely man, but he's selling you a perfectly working product. But no, stop yourself. If you don't have enough fish, okay, then and you're just raising plants, then you want fertilizer. But
or more fish. Just put it.
Or more fish, right? Balance, okay. More plants, more fish, more plants. Keep it balanced.
Right.
You're not going to get an aquascape that way. You're not going to get this awesome aquascape where it looks like a miniature model of the Brazilian rainforest.
So that goes along
the more fish you can have.
That goes along the same lines of what people are doing. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, with the saltwater tanks is they're putting reefroids and fuel and all this other stuff in there to get explosive growth out of their corals. But at the same time, if you do that, you have to be able to filter that back out of the aquarium quickly so you don't foul up the tank.
Well, you have to have enough of an organic base to be able to handle that bioload.
Right.
See,
right.
Go
ahead.
That's where a deep substrate comes in.
See, this is where they get you on a slippery slope, okay? I've had saltwater fish for years without a protein skim. Okay, you fed the fish, what they needed, the deep substrate. We used to use under gravel, slow running under gravel filters. That would break down the waste. You could go months, maybe even a couple years without a water change. Okay, you didn't get a protein buildup. But what happens is they get you to put the one chemical in, and then you need all this technology to get the stuff out.
I know.
Right. Exactly.
I put a few drops of fuel in there, and then I thought about it, and I was like, "There's no way in hell that I'm putting any more of this in the tank because it makes no sense. If I get explosive, if I'm putting the stuff in to get explosive growth out of the corals, there's no way I'm not going to follow the tank."
Right.
You will. A protein filter, a protein skimmer will do a nice job, by the way. It will help. And I've seen setups. If you want to go high tech, okay, I'm not going to discourage people from doing it.
Oh yeah.
I'm just going to tell you, you're stepping out on the slippery slope.
Yeah, it's a maintenance issue at that point.
You're going to start adding. The more chemicals you add to fertilize the plants, the more water changes you're going to have to do to get them out of there. Okay, it's just gonna spiral into. It might be pretty. Don't get me wrong. It might be pretty. It might be esoteric. It might be high end. It might be high tech, and you can impress your friends. But remember, you're going on that slippery slope.
Well, and what's the percentage? So, like, my salt water, I can't remember. I've got to look it up. It's like 12 gallons roughly. That's been going for about 8 months now. Mm-hmm. And if you look at it from day 1 to 8 months, I'm fine with the growth. There's been
it's a great looking tank, yeah.
Yeah, there's plenty that's happened in there, and I didn't have to force it to happen. Like everything is doing its own thing. The mushroom coral, the Recordia mushroom that's in there is probably just about twice the size as when I got it at like 2 months. I think that's good enough. How big does it have to get in that time period? Why do you need it to be 8 times the size? So
you've got people. One of the things that people don't understand is that there are things you can do for display. There are things you can do because, well, hey, you really want to show off. Okay. There are things you might want to do in a professional environment or a museum or an aquarium or something. And yes, that's a way to go. But on the other hand, for the home hobbyist, enjoy the animals, enjoy the plants, enjoy the stuff you have, and understand there's a certain element of limitations that nature places on you. And whenever you want to exceed that you're going to be paying for it somewhere. Somewhere along the line, you're going to pay for that.
Something equal reaction. A reaction.
Exactly. The best aquarium is a balanced aquarium. Not too many plants, not too many fish, not too small, not necessarily gigantic and wasteland, although that doesn't hurt.
Right. If any one thing is exploding, you've got a problem. Or not necessarily a problem, but you've got something going on that's not a balance.
Not a balance. That's right.
It's exploding because it's trying to balance itself.
Right. Which is cool. Exactly. Just like, for example, we talked about the duckweed a bunch. My duckweed goes through phases, it seems like, in that 10-gallon. When I first added a little bit, didn't grow very fast, and then it hit an explosive stage, and I've taken a decent amount out, and it hasn't grown back very fast. It's basically very, very slow growing right now, which is telling me there's not excess nutrients, I assume, in the tank.
Well, you've made an interesting point in that you don't feed much. Okay.
Well, that's true.
What happens is you can literally take the volume of food you put into the aquarium, and that's the volume of plant growth you're going to get. Okay, because it's literally an equation between so many grams of carbon. Remember, plants are made out of carbon. You're feeding your fish carbon. I'm reducing it, by the way.
Yeah,
you're not feeding your fish carbon.
That's how I think of it. Everything you put in
has to come out.
Yeah, and it's concentrated when it goes in. So
So basically, the bottom line is that what you're actually getting is you're getting a situation where if you're not putting much in, the duckweed has nothing to eat, so it can't multiply.
Right.
Now, the other thing I'm going to say is most of what those old timers like me will tell you about feeding is feed less. And that's because we know that most of you feed too much.
Yeah,
Okay, but look at your fish. If they're looking hollow,
that's
if
the
they
trick.
don't look healthy, for the sake of all things holy and sane, feed your fish.
Well, I've read on the forums, people have talked about that. The worst thing you can do is watch your fish slowly starve to death. And it's interesting. So I take that with a grain of salt and I think about it. And I think one beneficial thing to do is to take periodic pictures of your aquarium. Because if you take periodic pictures, you can refer to it. Because like my clownfish, to me, they don't look any bigger than when I got them 8 months ago.
They don't grow really.
But
They grow very slowly.
But in all reality, they're growing. They're literally almost twice the size as when I got them. So in 8 months, if they doubled in size almost, I feel like they're not starving, and they're getting fed. Now the guppies in this other aquarium, I look in the past few months and I'm like, the guppies, I didn't take pictures, but I'm looking at them. I'm thinking, I think they're about the same size as when I put them in. But I don't feed the fresh water as much as I feed the salt water. So I'm thinking I'm going to start bumping up the feeding just a hair, like 20% more, and see if they grow a little bit,
It's not growth on guppies. Okay, for guppies are like tribbles. They're born pregnant and they reproduce. The more you feed them, the faster they reproduce.
Well,
okay?
I only have 2 males. So if they reproduce, we have a problem.
Oh, you shouldn't have just 2 males. Come on. Give you guys a
Otherwise
break.
they take over. I have 2 tanks at the office, and they reproduce like it's insane. They just
Right.
they reproduce until their spines are crooked and they're all white.
Right, but then basically what you need is an Oscar.
There you go.
Yeah.
This is the perfect reason to get an Oscar.
Circle of life, right?
I've got too many guppies. You just need 1 Oscar. You know how many guppies I can eat? Or lionfish. There you go.
So we're going full circle to the Oscar thing and koi and stuff. So my girlfriend's dad, he has just gravel, and he's got one of those sump filters or whatever. That's not a sump; it's a canister filter. But I was looking at his gravel because his tank is probably 60 to 70 gallons, somewhere in that neighborhood. I don't know the exact amount, but he has some pretty big koi in it. And I'm looking and I'm like, man, why is there not a whole bunch of waste in the gravel? But they're constantly, whenever they're hungry, they're grabbing a mouthful of gravel, and it looks like filtering it and spitting it back out.
Right.
They're digging it, they're spitting it back out, which is something that doesn't happen in an aquarium with gravel when you have smaller fish. They're not able to do that, and then it seems like the waste builds up. But I mean, his gravel's clean as can be in that aquarium.
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons you don't let goldfish loose into a pond. And I've seen it happen. You get a nice little pond, a little bass pond or something, and some genius throws a couple of goldfish in. And the goldfish will go along the bottom.
Duckweed. They'll eat all the duckweed.
They'll eat the duckweed. They'll eat every other fish's eggs. They will eat all the newt's eggs, all the frog's eggs. They will eat any egg that they find other than their own.
So
that's
I had a store in north of me, in Grand Rapids, if you're familiar. They told me that goldfish can live up to almost 60 years. Is that true?
Longer.
Insane.
Things live forever, but not in a fishbowl.
Yeah.
Right. It's a carp. Carp can live 100 years.
Yeah, and koi even longer. But they don't, because they get big, and most of us really can't. I don't know if you've ever seen a pond-raised goldfish. It's 5 pounds or more.
No.
It's
I've seen
carp.
Yeah, koi will get 5 to 6 foot.
They get huge, and think about
Holy cow.
Think about the average hobbyist. They're stunting them at best if they're keeping them for any length of time. And, our lives change. One of the things I like about killifish, they naturally only live a year. So I'm not worried about where those fish are going to be when my daughter graduates college.
Yeah, right.
That's my reservation with the whole buy a goldfish to remove the duckweed. It's like, well, if they live that long, like, I feel bad. If it's something that
He
reproduces,
really does need an Oscar, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
I told you guys about the saltwater shop in Kalamazoo that has two. I mean, they look like they're 10 to 12-inch Oscars, and they've got them in some small breeder tanks that have dividers in them. Somebody must have dropped them off. I just seen them like a week ago.
Yeah, probably.
And they're just they pick up all the gravel on the bottom and spit it at the glass every time you walk by.
I used to get them all the time, big ones.
When
I
I
get with 15 or 20, and then send them off to a farm.
Really, they said minimum 125 gallons required, and they're in 20 gallons of a divided 40.
you can
You can keep a pair of 12-inch pair of Oscars. If you got nothing else, you can keep them in a 55, and they'll be happy in there, and they'll spawn. I've got a video coming up of Oscars spawning in a vat, one of the black 125-gallon vats.
Like
Loaded with a
tractor flyer or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
For those of us who are old enough, there used to be a 50-gallon tank. It was 3 feet long by 18 inches.
Ice tank.
18 inches deep, and that one
40, like a 40 breeder, but taller.
And that one was you could do it one full-size Oscar, which is probably closer to a 15 to 18.
Right.
And that will kind of still, because it can still turn around. The 55, they start having trouble turning around. But
They go up.
yeah, it's a nice that was a beautiful show tank for those of us who remember it. But
Wonderful tanks, yeah.
So Oscars must live basically forever too, right?
no, they're probably
10 to
close to
20
12.
years.
Sorry, I'd say 12, but all right, yeah. If you want to fish that lasts forever, go with the Synodontis cat.
No, I don't want to fish. My gosh, I can't keep the dwarf around me alive for more than a few months. I don't want to be responsible for something that lives longer than I do.
I had an upside down catfish for 22 years until someone dumped a bucket of latex paint into the aquarium.
Well, see, here's the thing about fish. Fish have the ability to slow their metabolism down to almost zero. There are fish in the North Sea that are documented to be 500 years old.
Yep, there's a red fish that comes out of the Pacific that's now a food fish. I forget what it is. And when they first found them, they were in deep, deep water. They were scooping them up and selling them dirt cheap, and all of a sudden they disappeared. So the scientists tried to figure out why aren't these fish, reproducing. It turns out the average one was 100 plus years old.
Yeah, exactly.
Holy crap.
Yeah, we just wiped the species out, and they didn't, It's going to take another 100 years before they repopulate.
So I know Father Fish was getting burned out, but on that note, what do you guys think about the king crab situation? I have a theory.
2 years in a row, it's shut down.
So before you give your theory as to what happened, I suspect the temperature difference has just caused them to go further north towards Russia, right?
Yeah, probably.
So they've just crossed the line and they can't reach them anymore.
Japan's still harvesting them.
Well, the reality is right now, some of the major, at least one of the major rivers in Alaska is not even allowing salmon fishing anymore by the Inuits, by the local people, because their salmon runs down to 10%. What we don't understand about our Asian friends is these guys hit an area with drag nets that are miles long.
Oh, I know.
Right.
Yeah.
And they take everything out of the ocean.
Yeah, they don't care. They'll just wipe it all out.
Yeah, and if it's gone, it's gone. They move on to something else. And I was looking at the supermarket. More than half of the salmon, which is an American species, is coming from Thailand. The reason it's coming from Thailand is these are these Asian fishing boats that are wiping through our waters and sucking up all the fish at sea before they can come up and spawn.
Well, they're
I mean,
just
they went-
so they're just harvesting. My opinion. I know nothing. I'm young. I don't know anything. But from what I can tell is I'm just assuming that instead of growing their own food, they're just completely
harvesting.
devastating the seas and not putting anything back into it, just wiping it out. And
That's what they do.
yeah.
That's what they do. I mean, and again, before the technology, that's what they always did. But technology wasn't there to let them wipe out entire species.
Right, exactly.
And,
Right,
Now
right.
they got
The
ships that can
ability to
clear
do that.
out
Yeah.
1,000 square mile area.
Try finding pollock at your supermarket. That's a really tasty little fish. Cooks up nice. Try
Oh,
finding
you're
it
right. I haven't seen pollock in ages.
in years. It's still being
Yeah.
Oh,
used.
yeah. I was thinking cod, but you're saying pollock. Yeah. I don't-
Pollock's different. Yeah.
It's like a Pacific version of the whiting, and they're harvested mainly for sea legs now, making those imitation crab meat.
See,
But
so we're close to Lake Michigan, so we get salmon and perch relatively easily. So, perch is a big thing at all the local restaurants here. I don't know if you've had perch.
Oh.
Perch is good.
Yellow perch. Yeah.
Perch is
yellow perch, I used to fish for it. It's a nightmare to clean. Ugh, it's a lot of work. Those scales fly everywhere. They're like little
Hard
armor
shell,
plates.
Yeah. It's a nice fish, then.
yeah.
You
I always fillet.
So I'm assuming you guys have had walleye.
Yeah,
Uh,
right once. Best
Wall-
fish I think I ever ate.
Walleye. So we used to catch those. So we'd go up to Boundary Waters, Minnesota, and you'd put a leech on a little hook. I can't remember what those little jigs are called. They're like little fluorescent. They have like little heads with eyes on them. They have a tiny hook. You stick a leech and you drop it down to the bottom of the lake. It might be 30 feet, 40 feet, 50 feet, depending on where you're at. And you pull it up just a few feet off the bottom. And you'd wait just a couple minutes. And every time you'd pull in this massive walleye. And we'd fillet them out on the rock. And we were camping because that's like, a wilderness preserve. But we had this little island across from our little campsite that had 2 dead pine trees. We had 2 bald eagles that would sit up there every day, and I'd clean the walleye and the northern pike, and I'd set them out on the rocks. And I have pictures. I'll have to try to see if I can find them of them, just huge bald eagles swooping down and grabbing the carcass of the fish.
Yep.
And going back to the pine tree every day. And they got it in that routine. Every day we were there, they'd come back and scare the crap out of me. The first day I thought I was going to get picked up by a bald eagle. It's pretty cool.
yeah, eagles are scary. Years ago, I was out fishing, minding my own business. When all of a sudden, the water explodes 10 feet from the boat, maybe 20 feet from the boat. Just this huge splash, and then out of the water, you just see these 2 giant wings come out. I'm just, flabbergasted. What the? And this big bird comes out of the water holding this fish in its claws. That was impressive as hell. I mean, I didn't see it come down. It just glides down dead silent.
Yeah.
And next thing you got is this big splash, and it literally just hits the water and bounces off with this big fish in its claws. And I was just...
Well, imagine me in high school. I'm out on the rock, so these freshwater lakes up there, they're super deep, and I'm cleaning this fish and I'm like, well, what the heck am I going to do with it? I'm like, we got to get rid of it. There's bears and stuff up here, we got to do something with it. And so we're thinking about that. And none of the other kids wanted to, flay them out and stuff. So I set them on the rock and I'm flaying the other fish and I turn around and set the next one. There's this bald eagle there. Just to get me. I about died. And I had a disposable camera at the time because digital cameras weren't really a thing. And I've got so many pictures of that. It's so cool. But
those,
cool
yeah,
too, because we cast out, and you could cast out, and every time you cast out, if you're fishing for the smallmouth bass or northern pike or whatever, you catch a fish, a keeper. Here you don't do that. You can fish all day and try to catch some fish that you can keep.
good luck. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's I mean,
Hey, Taylor, nice to see you.
they put walleye in a lake I used to live on, and I went up there and I was just scooping up some minnows for aquarium use, and I picked up a baby walleye because they introduced it.
Wow.
And I remember looking at it, it's about an inch and a half long, going, "What the heck is this thing?" And then, imagine, because a baby walleye looked just like a big one. I'm thinking, what in God's name is this? I grew up here, and there was no such fish. And all of a sudden, I went, oh, that's a walleye. So I've caught a walleye technically, but I didn't eat it. So
Walleye is such good eating, and northern pike are pretty good eating too. But they have the Y bone in them or whatever, so they're a little bit harder to clean and stuff. But man, walleye.
That Y bone is real soft.
Yeah, and walleye
were good. I used to eat a lot of pickerel as a kid. Sunfish aren't much. They're decent. Oh, you ever try to eat a carp?
No.
You want to know something that is inedible?
You ever tried to carp?
That's being kind. My wife went to I caught a carp once, took it home, cooked it, tried to cook it. It stunk up the whole house. Couldn't eat the thing.
We get carp and sell them to some other people, but we would not eat them.
No, so the funniest thing is my wife gets to the supermarket, she sees carp, and it's 15 cents a pound, that's probably what it is. And she brings
away.
Yeah, it's barely worth that.
They have it in, I think there's certain holidays that certain people eat them. But lo and behold, she brought back a whole bag of it, and I looked at her and I just, no, don't cook it. Don't even cook it. No, don't put it on the stove. No, that's the frying pan. Oh no! And she throws it on.
Catfish,
And she's just so so determined at this point. She got the bargain of a lifetime. She actually sat and tried to eat it. And I'm after stinking up the whole place. I'm just sitting there looking at this in horror. She didn't succeed eating it. It all went in the garbage. It was a shame. But
the worst fish.
That's what you put on stuff.
Oh, I got some of that. I just got some of that. Slap your mama. I caught a fish in Florida that I was so excited about. It was a bowfin, about 1.5 feet long, probably 2-pound fish. I had never caught one, never eaten one. Cleaned it, put it in the pan, and then the first taste, it was mud.
Oh.
Same texture and the same flavor as mud.
And then carp have all those bones. It's literally a pine cone.
Anything that's a bottom feeder, I stay away from. Anything that feeds off the bottom, which is also interesting, though, I think, because I haven't looked into the walleye situation, but I do find it curious that they hang out on the bottom of the lake, but they taste super, super good.
Well, they're not eating microscopically, though.
They're not eating the muck. They're not muck.
Yeah, they're eating little fish and crustaceans.
We used to have a little dam here down the road. I won't say where, but we had a little dam. Well, it was a bigger dam, but they tore out the wood and stuff. And then it was just like a few feet drop. But I used to go down there when I was younger, before I had a fishing pole and all that stuff. And I'd take a little bit of fishing line and a hook, just a few feet. And there were little crevices and rocks right at the edge of this. I'd put a worm on it and I'd drop it down in the rocks. And I'd pull out these huge catfish all day long.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't eat them.
They're just ugly critters.
That's a good tasting fish.
That's a good tasting fish, but they're just ugly.
Yeah, if they're cooked right, they turn out pretty good.
It was wonderful. I love eel.
I can't bring myself to eat carp.
No, that's no reason to. That's you're better off just starting with dignity.
Eel.
What
does
eel is delicious? Smoked eel. That's it. Nothing else. Just smoked eel. You just okay all day long.
Have you had Whole Foods? I don't know if you have Whole Foods around you, but Whole Foods sells candied salmon. That's one of my favorite things. You can't really get
salmon. Huh.
you can't really get that anywhere. You know, it's like a smoked candied salmon, and any of the grocery stores that you go to, they don't really have anything like that you can have. That's the only place that I've gone that you have like a smoked salmon basically, and they have like anywhere from 3 to 8 flavors that you can get, and buy it by the pound. It's pretty good.
Anything smoked is delicious. Just smoke it. I don't care what. I don't think you can smoke a carp. But aside from that, anything other than a carp is delicious. Smoke it and I'll eat it.
Well, you can smoke anything if you try hard enough.
No, yeah, I won't go that far. There's a limit to everything. There's a limit, even for me.
Everything in moderation.
No, but there's still a limit. Carp, just no.
Well, what about gar? You guys ever caught
Oh,
gar?
I got a story about gar. EJ took her son to a camp. On the way back, she and her daughter stopped at a green pond
This was in her fridge, right?
to get duckweed, and her daughter walked out in the middle of this thing and brought back 2 2-foot gar.
Oh,
2 of them. Picked them up and brought them back. 13-year-old kid. Well, one of them was near dead. And the other one was kicking by the time they got home. So the one that was alive, they took and put it in a local pond. The one that was nearly dead, they cleaned it, cooked it, ate it, and loved it. They said it was wonderful.
what? Out of a small pond too?
Out of a
No
little
way.
green pond.
No way. See,
Hey, no. Let me tell you, I used to catch crabs down the road from my house, and oh man, I'd go to the pet supermarket, get some fish heads for just rotten fish for night. They don't charge you for it; they just put it back. Off you go. And so I had my crab traps, and I was sitting there getting crabs. And one day, there's a big sign where I crab, no crabbing, $500 fine. So I
so you
called up.
knew that was the spot to go, obviously.
Well, it's assigned by the DEP. Department of Environmental Protection had that sign up. So I called up the DEP and said, "Why are you messing with my crab spot?" And the guy goes, "Dude, you can't eat the crabs there. That's cadmium. That's just deadly toxic waste. I've been doing that for years." He said, "Well, that's not a good plan." I said, "So I guess I shouldn't have been scooping up the mussels either and eating those." And he goes, "There are mussels?
Oh no!
You can't live in that water." I said, "Well, they were they opened. They were closed until I cooked them, so they must have been living there." They were lime green, which was kind of strange. But
Like
Yeah, they
the
were
New
fluorescent.
Zealand. The New Zealand is
lime green mussels, but they were tasty as hell.
Well, and that's how it is here with everything. So we have the DNR puts. They have a fish hatchery not far from here, and they put salmon out everywhere because we had a problem with alewives or something in Lake Michigan. Little fish, anyways, that would wash up. Yeah, and they'd wash up on the shore and stink up the place. So the DNR introduced salmon to take care of that problem. Rainbow trout and salmon, I believe. And so now we have rainbow trout and salmon like crazy, in the fall and stuff. They come up the river and spawn. So what was I getting at with that, though? Anyways, it doesn't stink as bad as it used to, and we have salmon.
nice. Every once in a while, it
Rainbow
works.
trout.
Really.
It only works for a short term, then something goes terribly wrong.
Yeah,
They've been doing it for I think since the late 60s. I think it was the late 60s, but regardless of that, now we've got a problem with zebra mussels here, and because of the shipping lanes, we have the St. Lawrence Seaway that connects to the Great Lakes, and they come in on ships and blah blah blah. But then we also have the problem of Asian carp.
Right.
We don't have them. I've never seen them, but I know they have them in the Mississippi down near Chicago, and they have an electrified portion of the river there into Lake Michigan that they keep separated. That's supposed to shock things, and keep them out. But I figure that's just a ticking time bomb.
Yeah,
So.
it's a stopgap measure.
Well,
Yeah.
grass carp, if you've got a lake that's over, a lot of the man-made lakes, they literally fill with seaweed. You can't row a boat through it. If
Not here. We're not too bad.
we have them here, that happens a lot, especially once people put lawns, who have lakefront property. They fertilize their lawns. That will destroy.
There are some lakes. We do have a ton of lakes here, so there's a lot of inland lakes that have problems because of fertilizer, but they're not too bad.
And that's why they brought the carp in, because I know someone back in the 80s who got some for
Grass carp, that's right.
Yeah, he brought it in for his pond, and his pond was a mess. It was just solid weeds because lawn and fertilizer, and it was just a solid block of weeds. And not only did they clean the weeds, but he used to take all of his lawnmower clippings and just shovel it into the pond and feed the carp. They're really a mess.
Oh my gosh! Well, I'd like to think that we're a little smarter than that here now. Like, it's been a thing for a while. There's signs up everywhere, and they've done a pretty good job of letting people know that, hey, the lake is a basin, and every yard around it flows into the lake, and they've been handling the waste.
Yeah, but people want their lawns, man. They want that green plush zoysia.
We don't have much of that. So only on Lake Michigan, other than that, which is dunes. I don't know if you're familiar, but it's tall sand dunes. On the lakes here, it's really small cottages and really small parcels, almost like. So it's not. They don't have lawns. They have just a little bit of a walking path.
What most people forget is that the storm drains from the neighborhoods that are 5 miles away and 10 miles away and 30 miles away are all connected and all slowly draining.
Yeah, that's true.
Head to the lakes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there, by my father's house, there's a grate that's been there for years in front of the house. And one day they ripped it up. They put a new one down. It said, "Do not dump oil or whatever." And there's a little picture of a fish on it, just to point out that it runs. That drain goes right into the
storm drains here are the same way. We had we used to have they call it the mill pond, but it's a Black River. It goes out like 10 miles away, and we had a company here called Dewells, and they did a lot of chrome plating. And anyways, that caused a problem apparently because their drains were all going right into the mill pond. So then at some point, the government paid for them to go in and dredge the area and stuff, and it caused a whole bunch of issues, and they figured out a whole bunch of things. But that's when they put in all of those things that you're talking about. They basically say storm drain lets people know that this goes down to the river. It's not something that is treated or anything. So I doubt people pay attention to that, but.
Well, we never even thought about it when I was a kid. There's a drain. It goes, who knows where it goes? It goes to, some processing plant.
On another messed up point of that, we found out in our city, it's just a small city, thousands of people, not hundreds of thousands. We found out that back in the 60s, hopefully nobody hears this because this was a kind of an inside thing, but we found out basically that the inspector that was inspecting when the city got its own sanitary sewer and installed it for the city, there was an inspector that was going around and hooking everybody up or verifying that they were connected, I should say. Well, if you paid him a little extra money, you didn't have to hook to the sanitary sewer and you stayed hooked to the storm drain. Well, then we had an issue where the DEQ came out and said, we've got an oil slick on the river.
Yep.
Come to find out, one of the industrial facilities never got hooked to the sanitary sewer. Now the trick to this, the city was pissed, the DEQ was pissed, and they wanted to blame the industrial owner for this. And he said, well, hell, I've been paying sanitary sewer for 30-something years at least since I've owned the building. He said, that's fine, but refund me for the since I haven't been hooked up.
They
They said, never mind.
I actually saw this when I was house shopping.
They
There was-
paid for him to get hooked up, by the way.
That was nice of them, yeah. But no, there was. I actually found a house. Okay, it was a beautiful house. It was had all sliding doors. It was made in the 1800s. Had all sliding doors, and apparently it had been a slave quarters at some point. That's in New Jersey, so that's an old house.
Underground Railroad.
Or worse yet. But in any case, so it was sitting there right on the Raritan Bay, and it was at water level, and had just been hit by a 100-year flood, and it was very inexpensive, and it was a big, beautiful house. And I was looking at buying this house, and I'm like, okay, so it floods every 100 years. It just flooded. God willing, I might.
I don't plan to live 100 years. It'll be fine.
Yeah, so I put an offer in on it to some degree, and then I went through the house to do the inspection, and I see a opening in the backyard with a hose coming out of it, and that hose is going all the way back into the marsh behind the house. I look at that, and it's like, wait a minute, this house has a septic system.
That's the drain field.
Yeah.
Well, the septic system, well, the house is only 3 feet over water level, so there's no way that was a real septic system. All that was the theoretical place where the waste went, and then it got pumped into, there was a weird smell too, and that got pumped back into the marsh right behind the house. And I remember looking at that going, and it was a 2-acre property. I mean, this thing is, if this was that's a $500,000 property, and it was for sale for $60,000, and I'm like, or less. And I remember looking at this thing, and there's got to be a catch. And then when I realized that there was a submersible pump that they just dropped into this,
Oh my God.
and then pumping it back out to the fields, and it was literally on Raritan Bay. 200 feet from the bay, the waste was just going right into the bay.
I've seen that. So here, clay tile's a big thing. So they had clay tile underground for all the fields and whatnot to drain them off. But I've seen it in septic systems. It used to be here, the requirement, the health department manages all the septic here. They tell you how big of a drain field you need and what size if you're not hooked to a sanitary sewer or whatever. It used to be that all the septic systems, or I should say the drain fields, were underground. Well, now pretty much everywhere around here, they say, no, the water table, and the way it percolates is not right. So you have to build it up above ground for the drain field. But then
you got to build a swale.
You start digging around and there's, 3-inch drain tile, clay tile going to the nearest stream everywhere you go. So when the septic gets full, it just overflows into the river.
I used to play in a river where there was the pipe with the orange stuff that came out.
Oh no!
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, I used to run around in that. I cut my foot. I never got an infection or anything.
Well, that explains it. You're only 36, right?
29, but yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Anyway.
He's 49. Can't believe it. I got 2 things here I need to do. Kaler Aquatics just donated $4.99 to the cause.
Well,
Thank you, Kaler. Kaler is an old friend who's been supportive from day one on Father Fish. Just a great old friend.
We need you to like, subscribe, share, because the algorithm is screwing Father Fish. The amount of views he gets is less than I get on my channel, and that's ridiculous. There's people that want to see this compared to what I put on my channel.
Sunset Jen says, I'm interested to hear more about plant fertilizer. Are dry farts.
Dry farts,
Okay,
dry farts.
water. Searched info on effects on microlife at tank. No luck. Okay, so here's the deal. If you want to provide nutrients to your microfauna, you need to put leaves, dried, dead leaves in the tank. It's just that simple. Research has indicated
Hardwood leaves. Try to go with oak, maybe maple.
Hardwood leaves.
Yeah, maybe mulberry. Yeah,
It's the source of nutrients for the food web in freshwater bodies is tree leaves. And the benefit of the hardwood is they break down more slowly. Now, what you should do is collect some of those leaves from an existing body of water. You can put them in a jar for a while to look at them and make sure that
nothing creepy crawly comes out.
yeah, get the creepy crawlers out.
Yeah,
And put that in your tank. That brings in the full panoply of life that your system needs in order to be effectively balanced.
yep.
That is the natural alternative to fertilizer.
And even fish food is fertilizer. You're putting fish food in, okay? You take your fish food, that's the carbon, and there's the nitrogen, there's the phosphates, there's all the stuff your plants need is in your fish food, okay? Your fish are going to eat it, and they're going to convert that to ammonia. They're going to pass the carbon and all those other things into your water. So even just the act of feeding your fish is fertilizing your plants, okay? There's a cycle. It's kind of a cycle.
Feeding all the microfauna.
And you're feeding the microfauna. They're breaking down the fish poop.
Right.
Can we say fish poop, or is there a better word for YouTube?
Detritus.
Detritus.
Premome.
I like how, not to change the subject here, but I like how Father Fish has the little studio theme going on now. He's got his sign, he's got his aquarium, his monitor, his mug. It's all coming together.
Yeah, we're getting there.
So, basically, look, when you go out there, yes, people will sell you anything that you will buy. Okay? So, of course, they will sell you a plant fertilizer. Of course, they will sell you all kinds of things as long as you buy them. It's not that you need them. Okay? You can put the biggest, most expensive canister filter on a small aquarium other than turning it into a toilet bowl, flushing round and round. But you can do it, and they'll be happy to sell it to you. But the trick is to get what you need because you have a plan. And, execute your plan and not get caught up on somebody who's got a flashier video than this. For sure, their video is cooler than ours.
Yeah,
okay.
You can spend $100 or you can spend $10,000. And if you compare the $10,000 tank to the $100 or $500 tank, would you know the difference?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's guys who won't ride around unless they got a Bugatti or a Rolls Royce or, something of that nature. Okay, cool. It works for them, and that's fine. But, if you got a decent car that gets you from point A to point B, you've really got 90% of what they have, except for, what, $500,000 plus.
Here's the difference. The difference is you can have a $10,000 aquarium, but you're not going to have two of them. You sure as hell are not going to have 20 of them.
Yeah.
That's true.
If you have 20 tanks, they're going to be $100 tanks set up and running.
When I was setting up my fish room, and I had to buy 8 heaters or 9 heaters at a time because I didn't have climate control in the fish room, I sure as hell wasn't going to the $30, $40, $60 piece heaters.
Yeah, right.
I was going to just hang on the backs, and they were in inventory in the pet store for 10 years. No one had bought them. We cut a deal. That's about it.
Right.
So you just have to work smarter, not harder.
Yep, I think they were Second Nature by Living World, and they'd been out of business for 5 years. And I see
it really depends on what you want to do. There are people who want to have one they don't want an aquarium. What they want is an artistic piece of furniture. They want a piece of art, living
Well,
art.
we see the same thing. So in the marijuana industry here, you have some people that think of growing it as agriculture, like growing corn, growing regular plants and stuff that you would grow for feed. You have other guys that think, oh, this is an art and we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to micromanage it. And when they go to micromanage it and they get crazy with it, they burn in fire. I mean, it never
Things go
turns
terribly wrong.
it never turns out. They overthink the solution and they end up burning up the plants in one way or the other, trying to chase chemicals basically, or chase parameters, just like you would do on an aquarium.
Yeah, and like I said, you're always going to find someone who's going to do a YouTube video, because at some point they're going to come up and they're going to say, we're going to sell you something, and come to our website, and that's part of it. I mean, again, I'm not saying they're selling you anything bad.
Speaking of that,
that
Father
it's,
Fish.
Hmm?
You get good plants on Father.Fish.
Yep, you get good plants from Father Fish, but basically, from someone in the hobby, someone who's really in the hobby. But, if someone's telling you, we'll sell you something, that's cool. And as long as it does what it says on the label, there's nothing wrong with it. I'm not knocking it. But whether you need it or not, or what the side effects are, again, you're putting fish waste or basically waste products in your aquarium to grow those plants.
Right.
What's going to suffer there? Obviously, it's the fish. So you've got to keep that in mind when you're setting something up. It's a balance. That's the whole concept of natural aquariums. If you're into natural aquariums, you're into doing a balance.
Well, the idea that you could manage the nutrients and everything in the water quicker than nature can handle itself is pretty ridiculous. That's basically where the problem lies from what I see. When they're growing these plants, is they think that they can micromanage it in a way that they're constantly ahead of nature and forcing nature to do what they want. And it never works. I have yet to see one work. The only ones that work, they push it in a general direction, but they let it do its thing and grow. The guys that are dumping minerals and chemicals and adjusting pH and chasing pH, they can't get a harvest to save their lives.
Really?
That's believable.
Catholic Gecko has got an issue here. I want to address it. As Father Fish, I added dry leaves in my 55 and my pond. The 55 is still water, and there's a white film over the leaves. The rest of the water turned green. In the pond, I lost a Congo and Bala shark. Okay, what did he do wrong? Number one, he put dry leaves in. I do not recommend that you start with dry leaves. I recommend that you start with culture. That means getting wet leaves from an existing body of water that has the microfauna, the life in it, the bacteria, the fungus, the microfauna, the microflora that it needs in order to break those leaves down. So you put dry leaves in a relatively sterile tank, and you've got a monoculture of bacteria as a slime coat growing on the leaves.
Okay, there's one other thing I'm going to add to that. I'm looking at it from a different angle, which is why we're both on the same, in different cubes, because we really can't, be in the same room without choking each other. Not kidding. But now, from the other perspective, when you add anything, we were just talking about balance, okay? On a 55, you don't need a handful of leaves. It wouldn't do that. 3, 4, 5, 6 leaves at least to start. Your system, your culture has to learn to eat leaves. You don't have everything to eat leaves. The white you're getting is a fungus. That's what the white is. It's a fungus. It's a very fast decomposer. In a newer aquarium, it's very typical to get white fungus when you first start it up because it's breaking down the carbon into something your bacteria can. So the white is fungus. It's not terribly bad. There's nothing wrong with it. It will go away in time. The green water is telling you got too many nutrients. Okay, if your water's turning green, there's just too much food for your plants that are in there to eat. So remember, Father Fish was just explaining to you a little while ago that you're putting the leaves in as food, not as decorations. Okay,
Now,
and it's
you
just
gotta hit, the thing is, you've got to have something to eat them before you put them in there.
bingo.
If you're
Okay, so
putting them in, if you're putting dry leaves in, expecting that those dry leaves are going to somehow create a varied, multifaceted culture of microfauna, you're fooling yourself because it ain't going to happen.
so what's the purpose of it? So this is something that we haven't talked about yet, specifically, at least the three of us. So I have that 10-gallon, right? I can't even remember what the plant is, but it's a floating plant with dark red leaves. And then I have what is it? Some sword leaf plant. Can't remember, but regardless, they drop leaves periodically as they're growing, and they float. Typically, they float. The sword, whatever one, doesn't float as much. They seem to die off and be attached to the, at the base of the plant and fall down. But the red ones, they fall off and they essentially float. Should I be removing them? Are those supposed to be doing that? What should I, what is the purpose of adding the leaves in the first place when you're adding your own leaves separately?
Okay, let me start. Father Fisher's going to wrap it up. The first thing that the leaves are doing is they're putting carbon into your system as they break down. This is food for microorganisms. That's square number one. The second thing that they're doing is they're absorbing chemicals, hardness out of the water. So if you want to soften your water a bit, leaves are going to help to soften it. Hardness is chemicals, calcium, and basically metals, and they're absorbing that. And they're taking it out of the water for you. So there's a benefit. You can use peat moss even better, and mosses will do that. The third thing they're doing is they're enriching. As they break down, they're releasing those chemicals into the substrate, and they're enriching creating foods that plants can even recycle. So it becomes part of the food chain. It's part of the food web. We called it a chain when I was a kid, but Father Fish has advanced beyond my years, and he's calls it the food web now. We've we're webbed instead of chains. But that's basically where you're starting. So, but you do have to address it as a food. It is actually a food. It's also a good place for some fish to hide. And you also have to keep in mind, if your water is very, very soft, adding too many leaves is also going to make you more acid. As those leaves break down, it's going to take your pH more acidy. So, it's better if you live in a place with hard water than if you live in a place with soft water. So everything you add has to have a balance. Father Fish, you're going to
So as far as those leaves go, though, what I've noticed is anything that dies in the aquarium, as far as duckweed or the leaves floating, anything that floats grows grows hair algae on it. If I don't remove it, it grows hair algae. Should I just leave it alone and let it do its thing, or am I getting paranoid because there's hair algae on it?
Depends how you feel about hair algae. You can always pull it out at a given point in time.
Well, that's what I've been doing. Balance it, pull out some and leave some.
All right. If you're putting food in your tank, you need a reason to put the food in there. You would not take a tank and fill it with water and then dump a can of food in it, unless your goal was to create rotten water. In which case, that would be an ideal way to do it. If your goal in putting food in your tank is to feed something that is already in the tank, then you have to be concerned about the quantity of food. RJ was talking a little while ago about the fact that we tend to advise people to feed less. That's because we know people feed too much. And
Right.
this leaf thing that Chunky Gecko was involved in was exactly that. He basically overfed his tank. Now, the reason I promote collecting wet leaves from the wild is to be able to get the complex and very sophisticated culture that exists in nature into your tank. What do I mean by that? There are at least, and on average, 1,000 different species of bacteria. That means 1,000 different kinds of bacteria with different names that live in different homes, different families. 1,000 different families of bacteria in a quart of water that you take out of a lake.
Which I need to do. That's one thing that I have not done yet. I feel like my aquarium's going to crash because I haven't done that. I have this anxiety.
No, it's okay. If you started out with a good culture, like I said, if you came to one of the tank behind me, 45 years, that culture has lived in an aquarium. There is crap in there that literally cleans the
Right.
glass. Okay, I haven't cleaned this glass in months. It just eats the algae off the glass.
Right.
Okay, it's some kind of a little
Absolutely true. And anybody who's had fish for 50 years knows to do that. But
Right.
the people who are setting up their first tank for the first time don't have an older tank to take their culture from.
Right.
That's
Right.
the issue.
Right.
And that's basically if you don't have if you don't have an old tank that you're kept going. And by the way, that's why you keep it going forever once you get it right.
Right?
And you can't go to somebody like me or Father Fish who's got tanks that are 15, 20, 30.
Well, you can because of Father.Fish now, right?
Yeah.
Just shameless
I'm
plugging.
considering a way to do it. It's difficult to do
I know.
because if you ship this stuff, it tends to putrefy in the bag. If it's in
Before
the bag more than
You got to ship it damp.
a day or two, you got to ship it overnight.
Yeah, or damp where the water's sloshing around and keeping it wet.
Well,
Have
it's
you
not
guys-
only got to be damp; it's got to have an infusion of oxygen in there to keep it from fouling.
The bag will keep it going for 3 or 4 days, but
A
not
day
just
or well, maybe.
I've seen
Maybe.
guys. So when I buy there's a company or a small mom and pop, you can say, small business down in Indiana that I buy some corals and anemones from, rock flower anemones, and I think it's like Salt Critters is the name of it. But they ship stuff. Typically, it ends up 3 to 4 day, and they buy and put basically hand warmer packets and
No, that's right. Yeah,
those will work.
foam
ice pack or heat pack.
Yeah, and
But
I've
you
never.
don't need that with a culture because most bacteria cultures can survive freezing.
Okay.
Okay, I remember your
Yeah,
pond.
the colder the better, actually, because it's
Yeah, I
up
mean-
and down.
We just need EJ to send us some cultures from that turtle
Right, right.
he's got going on. That
Yeah,
turtle.
Okay, so here's the to wrap this up about what the reason the water turned green is because of monoculture. It's because there was not enough cultural diversity in there. Green water occurs in the air. It's a spore that's in the air that blows into a body of water and if there's nutrition in that, it just explodes. If you
Yeah,
have a heavy diverse culture, then that green water is being eaten by the culture and it won't turn green. It only turns green if there is inadequate microculture.
yeah,
You gotta get a rich microculture. Now you can get it by insisting that RJ send you some of his. And if we beat him up hard enough, he'll do it. And it'll be just fine. It'll be perfect. If however you have to wait 6 months for it and you really want to get your tank going, then you need to go out to a local pond, ditch, stream, lake, creek, whatever, and collect some muck, some mold, some decaying leaves, some detritus.
preferably a clean lake, something that's got nice clear water in it, that has living healthy fish in it. That would be my advice if you're going to pick a place. I don't know about ditch. Ditch is hit or miss, but yeah, basically most of the bacteria are.
I know ditches I drink the water out.
Oh my gosh.
No comment.
He's got that immune system that we don't have.
Yeah, that's why he's already outlived with the rest of us by that point. But now there are some springs in the woods that would drink water out of, but none of the local ditches here.
Yeah, I can't think of any ditches that I drink the water out of and survive.
I've been collecting while I was in Florida. I was collecting from a ditch
But I mean,
on
if you think
both
about
sides of a road for about 200 yards. It comes out of the ground here, goes back in the ground here. The pH is 5.8. The water is cold. It's crystal clear. It's beautiful water.
all right, so
And
here's
it has an enormous variety of plant and animal life in it.
so are you
There are artesian wells I would have drank out of too. Is the ground water comes right out of the ground? I'll drink it. Not a
no, listen. Would
But
you
not-
would you drink the water that Father Fish is talking about, or would you drink Coca-Cola?
Well, the answer is yes. If I saw where it was coming out of the ground, if I saw it coming up filtered out of the ground, I would drink it, but not the other side of the ditch where it's going back in. By that point, I don't trust the water anymore.
Yeah,
Well,
I agree with that.
On that note, have you heard of Faygo? Do you know what Faygo soda is, or pop soda?
Nope.
So Faygo's local to Michigan. It was created in Detroit, but basically, the gist is the reason that you haven't seen it all over the country is way back when they first started making it, they were having issues with it staying carbonated long enough to ship it across the country. Do you know why?
What
No.
kills carbonation? CO2.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know the exact answer, but it was basically Flint water that they were using to create the Faygo, and they
It's
ended
got
up
plants
having
in it. Yeah.
they ended up having to they figured it out. I think they said in the late 70s or something. They figured out that the terrible water quality was why they couldn't keep it carbonated.
Right.
And they heavily filtered it, and then they were able to ship it around further. So
Yeah.
So my whole childhood,
microfauna
Yeah.
or flora rather. The microflora was eating up all the CO2.
that and the lead in the pipes, right? And the fluoride.
Now, for those of us old enough, Father Fish would remember this. Years ago, you basically won the lottery if you found a mouse in your Coca-Cola. What happened was they'd take the bottles back to the factory, and the mice would go in the bottles. Little mice would go in the bottles because there was still Coca-Cola in there, and then they'd go through the bottling machines, and you wouldn't see them because the cola was brown.
Oh no!
If you got a mouse, I know someone who was in the beverage industry back then. You got a mouse, you got a huge Coca-Cola check. It was winning the lottery. Him and his guys in the warehouse used, when they had nothing better to do, they'd go to the refillable bottles,
True.
flashlight looking for mice. They didn't find any, but it was very rare. But if you got the mouse, you got basically a huge blank check from Coca-Cola, here's $100,000 and sign a no disclosure, and that's it.
Well, that's
Halswald Bakeries. I think it was Halswald in Baltimore. Old time bakery. They sold bread. Popular as can be. Everybody bought Halswald's bread because it stayed soft, didn't get stale, blah, blah, blah. Until one day somebody cut the loaf open. I guess it was sliced. Pulled a slice out, and there was a rat in it that had been sliced.
Oh, jeez.
Cooked and sliced. They went out of business over that issue.
Now, you know something? I've worked in the food industry, and I'm not going to mention the name of the company, but it was a huge bakery. It was over a mile long with ovens that were half a mile long. And I'm going to tell you, I was doing security guarding back in college, and they had a rat trap every 10 feet along the wall. Those rat traps. The whole thing was rat traps. There was bait stations. There was rat traps outside of the place.
well, if you were a rat, where would you hang out?
In a cookie factory, and you would imagine that would be the place to live. But there was one rat. Now, I was working third shift, and it was a rat. It was the size of a kitten. There's no doubt about it. And the funniest thing, it only ate, it didn't eat the sweet cookies. It basically ate those unsalted saltines. And that's what it liked to eat. And that was right where I'd have to come out of the office to walk through the factory at night. Now, if that rat was there eating his saltines, that building was empty, a mile long, and there was not a person in that building because you knew security guard had a blue uniform, and we didn't chase rats. That was not going to happen. Okay, everybody else chased rats. So the thing was, if there was another living human being in the factory, you walked in, there was no rat at midnight. And you knew there was somebody in that factory. You knew if you were going in the dark and you were walking a mile in a big, empty, dark factory, you were going to come across somebody. Okay, might have been someone working nights upstairs in the office, or it might have been someone fixing a machine or something. But there was someone out there. If you walked back there and there was that rat digging out on his saltine crackers, you knew for sure you had the whole place to yourself, and you had nothing to worry about. So he was my best buddy. And I told the people who replaced me, anybody else who worked third shift, I said, you don't bother the rat, don't spook him. If he's not there, you know you got company. And if he's there, you know you got the place to yourself and you're safe for 8 hours.
That's insane. That's funny.
Oh, yeah, and I could walk right up to him. Again, blue uniform. I could walk right up to him and talk to him, and he just look up, and he with crackers in his hand.
Keep going back to eating crackers. Yeah.
Sunset Jan. Yes, you're on the right track. That's exactly the way to go. You need a vat outdoors, a bucket, anything that you got leaves in, that you have culture working in. I'm going to be setting one of these up in the next day or two. I want to get some set up outdoors, some tubs that will be out for the winter, so that in the spring they'll be flush with life.
Well, if EJ's in Texas, we should just have her, propagate some cultures and stuff for us so that we can.
The thing you got to understand though about when you go out and you collect stuff from the wild, if you collect a single leaf that's been on the bottom of a lake for 2-3 months, there's millions of bacteria on that. You don't have to go out there with a shovel or a snow shovel or a pitchfork and get yourself pounds and pounds of this stuff.
That's right. Doesn't take a lot.
You really need a few leaves, less than a handful, and you put it in a glass jar and you let it sit there and with some sunshine, and you see what comes out of it. If that whole jar turns green, you got some ugly algae. If there's things that kind of walk, kind of humping along, that's a leech. You got little things with feet walking around in that. That's not what you want to put into your aquarium. Okay, you want to not see much.
Love them.
Yeah, to a degree, but still, I can live without leeches. One of the members of Father Fish group actually got one of those leeches that was going tank to tank, was spreading around their fish room because some leeches can crawl out of water.
What?
There's leeches that can live on land. And she got herself one of those, and she was hunting or chasing it around her fish room as it kept popping up in different places. So
that's
and
how we were getting
fish.
those walleyes. I think I said that earlier. So we brought leeches with us, but there was a kid, and he'd go out in the rocks, and he'd go out with a cup and grab a whole bunch of leeches. I don't know how he was figuring out, but I wasn't interested in that part of it. And he'd get a cup full of leeches, and we'd go put them on those little hooks, drop them to the bottom of the lake, pull walleye up every time.
Yeah, they're on the bottom of all the rocks. Just flip over rocks, and you're going to find those leeches. Absolutely. You really want to find a leech, just walk into a mud bottom lake and stand there for 20 minutes. When you walk out, they'll be all over you.
Oh, thank you. I'm not
They'll
interested.
come out with you.
Fish are okay.
I really don't want to end all that note.
You don't want to end on the leech. Well, we could sell leeches. They have a medicinal purpose, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, so when you bring the stuff, those leaves out, you get a big gallon pickle jar.
Fly maggots.
Fly maggots, yeah. Give yourself a big gallon pickle jar. Throw the leaves in for a couple days, and you'll be surprised. I brought some sand up out of a creek, and there was little worms living in it. Really nice. I just couldn't get them out of the sand and into my aquarium, but I wanted to. I was trying to. So there's worms that you can get out of the bottom of the substrate. There's all kinds of bacteria, microfauna. It's amazing, but put in a jar for a week or two. See what hatches. See what's
That's
living.
what I need to do because I don't have any of that. The only thing that I started that 10-gallon with was the little bacteria starter, and I'm real leery on that stuff too. So I only did that for like a day or two because I don't know what's in it. The little bottle that they sell you that has the bacteria.
Yeah, that's got like 5 species of bacteria.
Yeah.
It'll create more than it'll solve.
Right. So I need to do that. That's my
By the
goal.
way, the stuff in that bottle, if it's good, we started a couple saltwater tanks with that. A friend of mine was big on it. He started very successful saltwater tanks, and it worked a treat. I tried a freshwater startup, and 6 weeks later, the fish died. The ammonia was through the roof. It never took off.
Really?
One of the things, even if they put good bacteria in that bottle 2 years ago, and that truck was in the desert, so,
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
exactly right.
and that truck was sitting in the desert in 120-degree heat somewhere in Death Valley as it was coming out of the factory in California. It was broken down, the refrigeration shut off, and that stuff was then put on the shelf, and it's been sitting on the shelf for 8 months.
Not only that, it's anaerobic.
Right.
Yeah, it ain't alive. I mean, that aerobic, it's dead. Whatever's in there is dead by that point. So, that's the problem with buying those bottles. If you're lucky, you got one that came right out of the factory and it's got good bacteria in it. It's going to give you a good running start, but it's not going to give you a food web. It's definitely, and again, you don't know what you got in that bottle. There's no way of seeing it unless you're putting it under a microscope to see if there's life in it.
Right.
That's what to do. Put it on a microscope, and if you see a lot of life, then you're cool. If not,
well, I already figured you can look at the date, the best buy date on it and stuff, and figure out how long it's been on the shelf. And if you know that it's gone halfway across the country in a truck or whatever, everything's dead roughly. The majority of things in it are dead at that point. So
you'd be surprised how many of those have a best buy date on them for 2025 already on them.
Oh, I know. That's what I'm saying.
I mean,
so when you get it on the shelf at the store, it has a year left, but you got to figure that it's already, it was made 2 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, the thing it's one of those things where you don't know what the shelf life is. And, as far as what you're really getting out of that bottle, you don't know. I mean, it can be good. I mean, I know someone who started 2 tanks, worked a tree, salt water, and I tried one, and 6 weeks, there was no bacterial life in that tank at all.
The bottom line is to not be afraid of the natural world.
No.
That's the key. If you're afraid of bugs, you're not going to be able to keep healthy fish.
Right.
Fish have to eat bugs in one form or another in order to survive.
Oh, yeah. We've got little, I would say they're almost like gnats, but they're not gnats. I mean, maybe I guess they're some type of gnat, but we have little flies basically that look like gnats because of the aquariums, and they land on the duckweed and stuff.
Yeah, midges.
Yeah, and they're
Midges.
eating them and blah blah blah. But they're not around the house. We just see them around the tanks. They get around the lights and they get eaten.
Yeah, see, it's one of those things where you want to bring nature in. You want to be a little careful, not let all nature in. Okay, let's not let the
Raccoons, squirrels.
dragonfly larvae,
Listen to them.
snakes. I mean, there's certain nature we want to keep outside, but then there's good stuff that you can bring in that's going to be, that's going to be doing wonders for your aquarium. And yeah, basically, again, 45 years, but then the pond that you're taking those leaves out of could be been there for 300 years or 1,000
Right.
years.
Yeah.
So
Well, exactly right.
Yeah.
It's been there long enough to develop a very stable culture.
Exactly. So you can be going out and you can be going to a glacial pond or some nonsense that's been there evolving for, millennia, with ducks and things flying in and out of it, bringing new bacteria and upgrading the old. And, you can get some really good stuff. Although you can't see it, it's all microscopic. But you can be bringing all kinds of good stuff into your aquarium. And
Yeah, don't be afraid of it.
be careful with it, but don't be afraid of it. That's where Father Fish and I differ. I'm on the be a little careful. Don't bring everything.
Yeah, he's a little neurotic.
You just got to do it.
Paranoid.
Ain't nothing to it.
Paranoid.
As they say, ain't nothing to it.
Paranoid. That's because I know bugs are out to get me.
It's fine. Just drink the water out of the ditch.
They're
It
welcome
can't be
to
any
it.
worse than the Coca-Cola that we've drank our whole lives.
There you go.
All right, guys, we've been here 2 hours and 40 minutes.
That's pretty good.
Not bad at all.
Is anybody still with
We
us?
still got 25 people. With
How
us.
many?
Yeah, 24.
24 people. Wow. I'm impressed. Thanks, guys.
Just
Good
look,
to have
Well,
you.
people like beards, so
right? Thank you all.
yep.
The
Thank
ladies
you,
will be
guys.
with everybody.
See ya.
EJ, Luke, thank you so much.
It's always a lot of fun. Take care now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care, guys. Bye for now.